Hi, and welcome to the NBA show. My name is Morten Jensen, and today we'll be discussing draft pick protections. Stay tuned. So last week at the NBA trade deadline, I already kind of talked it a little bit. The Bulls traded for Nikola Vucevic. They gave up a 2021 and 2023 first round draft pick, both of which have top 4 protection. Now, what does that mean? It means that if the Bulls somehow jump up in the lottery, assuming they are in the lottery in the first place, to actually win the pick from 1 to 4, they get to keep it. The assumption is that the next year, an unprotected pick would then follow suit to the Orlando Magic. It's a way of safeguarding yourself in terms of not having to convey a certain draft pick that you didn't want to convey. Now, of course, this needs to be negotiated. The Bulls can't just say, well, we were going to protect our draft pick and that so be it. No, this has to be something that is negotiated, something that has to be talked about. The other team has to agree on it. There's a whole process. For the Bulls, it's super important that they got to protect those picks, in particular in those years. In fact, when the report first came out about the trade, I was kind of skeptical about the whole deal from Chicago's point of view. I was sitting there going, I don't know if this is actually a good deal, because we were under the assumption at that point that those picks were unprotected, in which case, what could have happened? Well, Cade Cunningham, the presumed #1 overall pick, again, assuming the Bulls would win the lottery, would go immediately to the Orlando Magic, thus already from that point of view, making that trade way more lopsided for the Magic than it would for the Bulls, or just basically equal or fair value. So for the Bulls to avoid that and actually be able to maintain their draft pick if they end up in the top 4 is huge. And the very fact that they also got the protection from the 2023 pick, which could be the year of the double draft, I'll get back to that in a moment, is further huge. It actually made me swing from, I don't know if I like this deal, to, oh my God, I love it for Chicago so very, very much. How did the Magic ever agree to this? So 2023. It has been rumored for a while that high school players are going to gain access once more to the NBA draft as it used to be. The process of being able to select high school players, that kind of system, was in place up until including 2005. We saw that with Andrew Bynum hitting the league as a high school senior. And from there, it was college guys. It was 1 year removed from high school. It was pretty strict. But nowadays, we're looking at a scenario wherein the high school classes could return to the NBA draft, and there's talk about that happening in the year 2023, meaning you would get actually 2 draft classes in one. You would get the draft classes from guys who were freshmen in college and for those who were seniors in high school. In short, the 2023 draft, assuming that's the year high schoolers gain re-entry, could be just filled to the brim with talent, absolutely stockpiled with talent, in which case, for the Bulls to safeguard themselves in the manner that they did is just smart. Protecting your draft pick is crucial. Now, there are situations wherein certain teams didn't do that and they got burned. So in 2011, the Los Angeles Clippers desperately wanted to get off the contract of Baron Davis, who at the time I believe was earning in the area of $13 million, and they attached an unprotected 2011 first round draft pick, sent it to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and lo and behold, that pick won the lottery and became Kyrie Irving. That's also why whenever people say, well, the Cavs won the lottery in 2011, oh, they were so lucky, they really didn't. The Clippers did. They were just dumb enough to forfeit that because they wanted to get off of Baron Davis's contract. So yes, a team that had a young Blake Griffin could have had young Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and Kyrie Irving. Right? Now, of course, you can't protect draft picks forever. The Bulls will also be a case of this. Now, full disclosure, I think both picks will convey. I don't think the Bulls will be bad enough to be in the running for a top 4 pick. They would have to jump substantially in the lottery, which I don't think is going to happen. So I think the Magic will get the 2021 and 2023 draft picks, which would be fine because it would be a little bit later after the 4. It would probably be in the mid to late lottery, in which case you're probably looking overall at a deal where the Magic received fair compensation for Vucevic. And yes, the Bulls would actually pay a fair price for him as well. It would just be a win-win for both sides. The point here is that if a team wants to have some cap flexibility and they're willing to give up a draft pick to get it, team should get in line to get it, especially if the team is so desperate to get off of that money that the draft pick that they're willing to attach is unprotected. So if you're an NBA team and you have a chance at getting an unprotected first round draft pick by another team that's desperate just to shed some money, you take that every single day. It doesn't even matter if you're in a win now situation. Take it because it could end up being worth gold just a few years down the line. Not to be forgotten, there's also a risk when trading future first-round draft picks that are far out in the future. In 1997, the Vancouver Grizzlies wanted Otis Thorpe, and they gave up a 2003 first-round draft pick to get him. So they basically shot that pick 6 years down the line. Well, it turned up to be the second overall pick in the 2003 NBA draft, one of the deepest drafts of all time. Now, granted, the Detroit Pistons completely whiffed on that selection. They drafted Darko Milicic second overall, but they could have had their choice between Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, or Carmelo Anthony. Had the Detroit Pistons got that pick right, Anthony would probably have made the most sense. Even though Wade was the better player, he would have been slotted right into that 3 slot over Tayshaun Prince. The Detroit Pistons likely would have won at least another ring, if not 2 more. That would have changed the entire course of history. Teams would have been reacting to the Pistons. They wouldn't have necessarily crumpled and traded for Allen Iverson because they had Carmelo Anthony on the roster, who was young and up and coming. They could have pivoted with other players, maybe even found a second win a couple years later, and maybe even won another championship. Again, history is full of these type of examples. Draft picks are important, and I realize nowadays, especially for top teams that are throwing around first-round draft picks as candy to get their guy, it doesn't really seem that important. For the Lakers especially, they won a championship by acquiring Anthony Davis, so what they gave up essentially does not matter. They're looking at this and going, we got a ring. That's the name of the game. That is the ultimate goal. We got it. We're willing to give up all those draft picks to win one. We achieved that, so no regrets whatsoever. That's actually pretty logical. I can get behind that sort of thinking. That's reasonable. But for teams that aren't that and who doesn't win a ring despite giving up numerous first rounders and thus costing themselves chances at getting cheap production from a rookie contract player who could turn into a superstar, that's risky. However you slice it, if you are going to give up a significant haul of your future first round draft picks, you better win, is generally my point here. If you come out of that without a championship and you end up giving up a guy who might become a generational superstar, that looks bad. Now, odds are, of course, that those picks will be somewhat late. Teams are wise to the fact that they're sending out draft picks somewhat in the near future, knowing full well that they have certain stars under contract for a while. They aren't really that afraid to give up those draft picks. The Milwaukee Bucks is a prime example of that. They gave up a haul for Drew Holiday, but they re-signed Giannis Antetokounmpo to a major deal. They know that they have him in-house. It would be very, very illogical to assume that they would crumple all of a sudden and the picks they gave out would be suddenly worth gold. That does not appear to be the case. It likely will be late 20s, and at that point, even though you can find gems late in the draft, you absolutely can, it does decrease the likelihood of finding a superstar or a franchise caliber cornerstone. Those type of guys usually go significantly higher. And yes, I realize Rudy Gobert went 27th. I realize that Draymond Green went in the second round. I understand all that. Even so, those type of guys are not really the norm. They're more of an outlier type of guys. You can find value everywhere in the draft, but the major tier 1 superstars, they usually go pretty high. So that really brings us to the lesson of the day. If you're a team that's desperate to get contracts off of your payroll, do not, under any circumstance, be so desperate that you give up first-round draft picks without protection. Make them significantly protected at first. If the other team says, no way, we're not going to do it, then walk away from the deal. It's fine. If you have to swallow having a contract on your books for a year or two more just to prevent you having to give up a high lottery draft pick, that's worth it. Come on, that is a no-brainer. If you're trying to just get out of money and you're risking yourself getting potentially a superstar, then that is pretty much your pink slip right there. At least it should be. Any GM who does that with the mindset that getting off money is fine should be immediately fired. And yes, I realize that there could be a mandate from ownership, in which case you have no choice as a GM, but it's still in your best interest to find the best deal. I don't think at any point there's an overstanding over a GM going, hey, and that draft pick has to be unprotected. No way. No way, then you just go harder on the negotiation table. Even if it's top 1 protected, that's at least something. That would be super light, but it's better than nothing. So from here on out, whenever you hear your team or other teams being involved in trade rumors where they are willing to give up a substantial amount of draft picks, all of them may be unprotected, and you're looking at their cap sheet and going, well, some of their guys could leave within the next year or two, meaning that the pick that they are sending out a couple years down the line, that could be really high. Take that seriously, because yes, it could. It absolutely could. Now, of course, the theory is that if you give up a bundle of draft picks, the player you're going to get back is of substantial quality. That's a guy, that's a star. That is someone who can take you from point A to point B, or even better, from point B to point C and win that ring. That means the ideology here is that the picks you're giving up aren't necessarily high. They would be in the low to mid to late even 20s. You can survive that. That is a fair risk to run. But if you don't have control over your cap sheet, if your guy suddenly wants out, if the team suddenly implodes, which can happen, just look at the Houston Rockets, and you have sent out so many picks to build that team up in the first place, then that could look really bad a couple years down the line, because then suddenly you're a bad team and your original draft picks are in the hands of other teams that are benefiting from you being horrible. That's not a situation you want. And again, I understand, if we go back to the Chicago deal, that there's still risk here. Theoretically, if the Bulls were bad enough to make it to the lottery, they made it to the top 4, that pick would still get unprotected in 2022, which means that if the Bulls suck one more time, the Orlando Magic could stand to benefit should the Bulls win the draft lottery in 2022. Absolutely. That said, the Bulls identified certain years where in the draft appears to be stronger. There is a real franchise cornerstone / superstar in the draft this year in Cade Cunningham, and the Bulls just said, no way, we're not giving up that chance. And in 2023, the double draft, as I alluded to before, that's just smart safeguarding. And if they have to give up higher picks in 22 and 24, so be it. I think this was a smart play. I think more teams need to look at those protections. They need to hackle over those details so much more than they already are, because it could turn into such a drastic scenario where Kyrie Irving is the one you're giving up just to save a few bucks.